In every generation, there comes a moment when nations must rise beyond politics, beyond ego, and listen to the rhythm of their deeper purpose. Today, we speak not just of borders or strategies or military strength. We speak of patience, of silence that speaks louder than words, and of a vision that has been quietly unfolding over decades. The story of India and Israel is not one of aggression. It is one of resilience, of nations shaped by ancient wisdom yet guided by modern precision. Their paths, seemingly different, are rooted in the same soil of struggle, survival, and strategy. This is not about conflict. It is about reclamation of identity, of territory, and of truth. In this talk, we will dive into the silent alliance, the unspoken coordination between India and Israel, how two of the most underestimated yet powerful nations may already have begun a quiet but determined path to reclaim what history once marked as theirs, the region of POK. Breathe, focus, and observe. What we see on the surface is only the beginning. Beneath it lies intent, preparation, and a mission shaped by time itself. Let us begin. India and Israel have, over the last 2 decades, built a quiet but powerful partnership rooted in strategic intelligence sharing. This collaboration is not merely about exchanging surveillance data or military tactics. It is about synchronizing two of the world's most underestimated intelligence ecosystems to serve common geopolitical goals. In the case of Pakistan-Occupied Kashmir POK, this synergy is playing a crucial role, silently fueling India's readiness and precision in reclaiming what it sees as rightfully its own territory. At the heart of this cooperation is mutual trust. While most international partnerships operate on surface-level agreements and transactional exchanges, India and Israel have cultivated a relationship where intelligence flows in a deeply integrated and secure manner. The Mossad, Israel's intelligence agency, is widely regarded as one of the most efficient and covert in the world. Their experience in psychological warfare, counterterrorism, cyber intelligence, and unconventional operations has long been admired globally. When India began modernizing its intelligence architecture, it did not look west to the U.S. or U.K. for templates. It looked to Israel. This collaboration is not new, but its depth has intensified in recent years. Following the Kargil War and the growing unrest in Kashmir, India began seeking methods to counter threats not just militarily, but also psychologically and technologically. Israel stepped in quietly, offering both tools and techniques. From drones and electronic surveillance systems to satellite-based tracking, the two countries began sharing raw and processed intelligence. What India lacked in agility, Israel offered in tactics. What Israel saw as regional parallels in terrorist threats, India brought to the table in strategic territory management. This two-way exchange has created a hybrid intelligence network, fine-tuned to monitor, assess, and anticipate movements in and around the POK region. A major focus of this alliance is preemptive strategy. Rather than reacting to provocations or attacks, India has slowly shifted to a doctrine of anticipatory defense. This means acting before the threat materializes. Israel's philosophy, shaped by decades of existential threats, has always leaned on the belief that waiting to respond is a weakness. India has adopted this logic in its approach to POK, especially post-Uri and Balakot strikes. Intelligence sharing from Israeli satellites and human intelligence, human inputs have played a key role in mapping out terrorist launch pads, infiltration routes, and militant communication hubs in POK. These inputs are not only used for airstrikes or surgical operations, but for long-term planning, understanding the social dynamics, militant morale, and funding patterns within POK. Cyber intelligence is another quiet battlefield where this partnership thrives. Israel's advancements in cybersecurity, spyware tools, and deep network infiltration have helped India track communications between terror outfits operating within POK and their handlers across the border. Data extracted from encrypted channels, intercepted conversations, and digital footprints have been used to dismantle entire modules. This kind of cyber espionage, conducted jointly or with Israeli advisory, leaves no official footprint but significantly weakens enemy networks. What makes this alliance especially potent is its silence. There are no loud public statements, no open military pacts. It is a shadow partnership where results matter more than declarations. As Israel provides India with not only tools but doctrines, India internalizes those practices and applies them with its own flavor, particularly in the complex terrain and political sensitivity of Kashmir. The outcome is a smarter, more calculated Indian strategy in POK, one that doesn't require open conflict to succeed, but one that is built on a foundation of intelligence precision, information dominance, and invisible preparation. India's military evolution over the past 2 decades has been significantly influenced by Israel's approach to precision warfare. As both nations face complex regional threats, Israel's experience in high-stakes combat and counterterrorism has become a blueprint for India's operational upgrades, particularly when it comes to surgical strikes, drone warfare, and small unit tactics. This influence is not superficial. It has shaped the mindset, training, and strategic doctrine of India's elite forces, and plays a pivotal role in how India prepares to address challenges in volatile regions like Pakistan-Occupied Kashmir (POK). One of the most transformative aspects of Israeli influence is the concept of short, swift, and precise military engagement, operations that achieve maximum tactical impact with minimal collateral damage. India, traditionally known for larger scale mobilizations and defensive posturing, began to rethink its approach after repeated provocations along its borders. The shift became visible post the 2016 Uri attack, when India launched surgical strikes across the line of control. While Indian intelligence and forces executed the mission, the concept, timing, and precision behind such an operation were deeply inspired by Israeli doctrine. Years of learning from Israeli advisors, joint training programs, and real-time intelligence assessments laid the groundwork for such decisive action. Beyond doctrine, Israel has helped India restructure how it trains its special forces. Indian units such as the Para-SF, Marcos, and Garud commandos have undergone joint training with Israeli counterparts, where they've learned not just tactics, but decision-making under pressure. In Israeli warfare philosophy, soldiers are not just instruments of the state. They are thinkers, analysts, and autonomous operators trained to execute missions in rapidly changing scenarios. India's special forces have embraced this ideology, which is particularly useful in regions like POK, where terrain, local resistance, and unpredictability make conventional approaches ineffective. Technology plays a central role in this transformation. Israel's focus on real-time battlefield awareness, combined with its innovations in drones, electronic warfare, and reconnaissance, has opened a new chapter in India's military capabilities. Drones like the Heron and Searcher, originally supplied by Israel, have become essential tools in monitoring infiltration routes and militant hideouts in POK. These UV provide real-time visuals, thermal imaging, and surveillance data that guide both strategic planning and on-ground operations. What used to require days of troop deployment and physical risk can now be assessed from a command center, allowing India to strike with surgical accuracy and then retreat without leaving a visible footprint. Israeli guidance has also enhanced India's adaptability in urban and guerrilla warfare. In counter-terror operations within Kashmir and along POK borders, Indian troops have adopted many of the house, clearing, and room by-room combat methods that Israeli forces developed during operations in Gaza and the West Bank. These techniques reduce casualties, avoid public blowback, and help in capturing targets alive for intelligence gathering, something Israel emphasizes heavily and has passed on to its Indian partners. Psychological warfare, another area where Israel excels, is now quietly becoming part of India's toolkit. From using misinformation to disorient hostile factions, to conducting cyber disruption and perception management through media and digital platforms, Israel's Playbook has provided India with an edge that goes beyond guns and bullets. This is critical in a place like POK, where winning the population's perception is as important as reclaiming physical ground. What distinguishes Israeli-influenced precision warfare is the moral clarity with which it is executed. Clear objectives, minimal risk to civilians, and swift exit. India's military, especially in dealing with the sensitive issue of POK, finds this balance essential. It allows India to engage militarily without inviting global condemnation, ensuring that each action is framed as defensive or preemptive rather than expansionist. Over time, this has created space for India to build legitimacy around its operations, gaining diplomatic ground while weakening enemy structures quietly and effectively. Technological superiority has become the invisible force multiplier in modern geopolitics, and India and Israel are quietly using it to shift the balance of power in the region, especially concerning Pakistan-Occupied Kashmir (POK). While traditional warfare focuses on troop strength, tanks, and territorial control, the modern battlefield is increasingly dominated by information, precision, and speed, all of which are governed by technology. In this regard, Israel's decades-long emphasis on developing cutting-edge military and surveillance systems has provided India with an edge that few expected, and fewer can detect until it's too late. The technological cooperation between India and Israel began with defense procurement, but has evolved into a deeper integration of systems, platforms, and ideologies. What started with India buying drones and radar systems from Israel has transformed into joint development programs in missile defense, AI-based surveillance, cyber, intelligence, and electronic warfare. This transformation means India no longer just imports technology. It understands, adapts, and integrates it into its broader strategic framework, especially in monitoring and managing high-conflict zones like POK. One of the most influential contributions from Israel has been in the field of unmanned aerial vehicles (UAVs). Israeli drones such as the Heron and Searcher have played a vital role in India's surveillance operations along the line of control. These drones offer real-time data, thermal imaging, and advanced target tracking, allowing Indian forces to monitor infiltration attempts, militant movements, and cross-border activities without putting boots on the ground. This has given India a significant intelligence advantage, enabling it to act with speed and precision. Surveillance that once required extensive manpower and posed high risk can now be done silently, remotely, and persistently. But it is not just surveillance that has evolved. The integration of Israeli radar and early warning systems with India's defense grid has enhanced India's ability to detect threats well in advance. In regions like POK, where terrain can limit visibility and traditional radar may struggle, these advanced sensors make it possible to monitor enemy activity across mountain ranges, valleys, and even underground bunkers. This reduces the element of surprise and gives Indian commanders the situational awareness to respond immediately to any hostile provocation. In the realm of missile technology, the joint development of the Barak missile system is another example of how Israel's technical expertise is helping India maintain a strategic deterrence. These systems are not just for defense against enemy aircraft, they create a protective shield over vital military assets and installations near POK. The mere presence of such systems alters enemy behavior, acting as a silent psychological deterrent. Cyber warfare is yet another front where Israel's prowess has directly benefited India. With growing cyber threats originating from across the border, Israel has shared its strategies and tools for both offensive and defensive cyber operations. India's ability to trace, disrupt, and counter digital attacks on its military networks has improved dramatically as a result. In the context of POK, this means disrupting communication between militant camps and their handlers, intercepting strategic planning, and even injecting disinformation to destabilize enemy coordination, all without a single shot being fired. Artificial intelligence and data analytics are also entering the equation. Through cooperation with Israeli defense firms, India is developing AI-based platforms that can process vast amounts of data, satellite imagery, intercepted signals, troop movements, and produce actionable intelligence within minutes. In a region as complex and volatile as POK, this kind of rapid analysis means the difference between a failed operation and a successful one. It also minimizes collateral damage, helping India conduct targeted operations that avoid civilian casualties and international criticism. This technological edge does not just enhance India's capacity to fight, it changes the very way India approaches conflict. It allows India to project strength without overt displays of power, to stay 10 steps ahead in planning without revealing intent, and to destabilize enemy networks without ever crossing the border. Covert operations and psychological warfare have become central to India's evolving strategy in Pakistan-Occupied Kashmir (POK), with substantial inspiration and tactical support drawn from Israel's long-standing expertise in the field. Unlike traditional warfare, where military strength is displayed through tanks, soldiers, and open battle, the new front lines are invisible. They involve sabotage without fingerprints, disruption without noise, and psychological impact without bullets. India's shift toward these shadow operations reflects a deeper understanding that reclaiming or controlling territory like POK requires more than physical force. It requires breaking the opponent's will, weakening internal structures, and making the battlefield unstable from within. The model for such operations can be traced directly to Israel's history of targeted interventions. From its operations against Hamas leaders to deep penetration missions in hostile territory, Israel has demonstrated that a few well-executed covert acts can have a larger impact than prolonged military campaigns. India has quietly adopted this philosophy. In recent years, the Indian military and intelligence community, particularly agencies like RAW Research and Analysis Wing, have begun to implement similar low-visibility, high-impact strategies in the region of POK. These include cross-border raids, sabotage of militant infrastructure, targeted eliminations of high-value individuals, and operations meant to demoralize both terrorist factions and their local supporters. One of the most significant tools in this arsenal is human intelligence, or HUMINT. Indian intelligence agencies, with guidance on methods from Israeli operations, have deepened their penetration into POK through the recruitment and cultivation of local assets. These assets are not only sources of information, but also instruments of disruption, spreading misinformation, identifying targets, and creating mistrust within enemy ranks. These activities are carried out with precision and silence, ensuring that the Indian hand remains invisible while the internal stability of terrorist networks crumbles. This approach, borrowed from Mossad's Playbook, places a higher value on quality of intelligence than quantity, and prefers subtle influence over overt force. The use of psychological warfare has also expanded significantly. India has realized that in areas like POK, the battle for perception is just as important as the battle for control. This involves the deliberate use of media, misinformation, and public narrative to influence both enemy morale and the sentiments of the local population. For instance, leaked videos of successful strikes, reports of terrorist leaders turning against each other, or rumors of Indian sleeper cells in POK all serve a strategic purpose. They instill fear, uncertainty, and confusion within enemy ranks. Israel has mastered this tactic in its conflicts, using both conventional and digital platforms to manipulate enemy expectations and reactions. India has taken notes, adapting these methods to its own environment and cultural sensitivities. Electronic surveillance and signal interception form another layer of covert influence. With Israeli support, India has refined its capabilities to monitor radio chatter, mobile networks, and encrypted communication channels within POK. This has enabled pinpoint targeting of militant hideouts, identification of supply routes, and interception of planned attacks before they occur. What makes these operations particularly effective is their deniability. When a militant convoy is struck or a weapons cache explodes mysteriously, there is often no traceable evidence pointing to India. This uncertainty creates paranoia among adversaries, making them distrust their own networks and constantly operate in fear. The psychological impact of these operations extends beyond enemy lines. It also boosts morale within Indian forces and builds a narrative of silent strength among the domestic audience. When covert operations are successful, they serve as a reminder to the world and to adversaries that India does not need to boast or provoke. Its actions speak in silence. Every disrupted operation in POK, every internal fallout among militant groups, and every anonymous strike creates a ripple effect of instability that serves the broader goal of reclaiming influence over the region without triggering full-scale war. The strategic objective of reclaiming Pakistan-Occupied Kashmir POK goes far beyond immediate military or political goals for India. It is part of a long-term vision shaped by historical claims, national sentiment, and evolving geopolitical realities. In recent years, this vision has found an unlikely but highly effective partner in Israel, a nation that understands the complexities of reclaiming contested lands, maintaining territorial security, and navigating international scrutiny. The collaboration between India and Israel in this context is not just tactical, it is philosophical. Both nations are operating with the understanding that reclaiming what is perceived as rightfully theirs must be done not just with force, but with patience, planning, and a careful orchestration of global perception. India's approach to POK has traditionally been restrained, shaped by diplomatic caution and fear of international backlash. However, with the shifting global order and rising acceptance of preemptive and defensive military doctrines, India has begun positioning itself to act with greater confidence. The revocation of Article 370 and the reorganization of Jammu and Kashmir in 2019 was not just a domestic move, it was a signal. It showed that India is prepared to redraw lines and assert control over its own narrative. In shaping this assertiveness, Israel's experience in redrawing maps and resisting global pressure has served as both a model and a source of strategic mentorship. Israel has operated under immense international scrutiny for decades, particularly in areas like the West Bank and Gaza. Yet, through information control, legal framing, and calculated diplomacy, it has managed to retain control and legitimacy in the eyes of powerful allies. The same approach is now being mirrored by India. Every move regarding POK, Whether a diplomatic statement, an intelligence operation, or a defensive military strike, is designed not just for regional impact but for international interpretation. Israel has helped India understand how to prepare the groundwork for global acceptance. It involves building the narrative over time, exposing terrorism and instability in the region, and framing any future action as a humanitarian or security necessity rather than territorial aggression. This long-term strategy also involves weakening the administrative and social structures within POK, rather than rushing into a military campaign that might invite resistance or condemnation. India is working to erode the foundations of control held by Pakistani authorities and militant groups. This is being done through a mix of intelligence warfare, psychological operations, economic pressure, and quiet alliances with local influencers. Israel's methodology of achieving silent control without overt occupation is evident here. It emphasizes influencing the region internally until it becomes unmanageable for the current holders and more receptive to integration with India. At the heart of this plan is timing. Both India and Israel understand that military action alone is not sustainable unless the environment, both domestic and international, is ready for it. That means waiting for diplomatic openings, regional instability in Pakistan, or broader global shifts such as the decline of support for Islamist factions and the realignment of global powers. These are slow changes, but they are being closely monitored and anticipated. When the conditions align, the path to reclaiming POK can be executed with minimal resistance and maximum legitimacy. In addition to waiting for the right moment, India is also preparing its legal and political narratives. It consistently refers to POK as an integral part of the Indian Union in official documents, maps, and statements at international forums. This long-term psychological conditioning ensures that when action is taken, it will not be seen as an invasion, but as an assertion of sovereignty. This mirrors how Israel has slowly normalized its positions over decades, using international law, media framing, and consistent messaging. By combining military readiness with narrative dominance, India's path to reclaiming POK becomes less about confrontation and more about inevitability, an outcome long prepared, widely accepted, and strategically executed.